Do we start with Newark poetry? Or do we start with just the city itself, the arc?
Okay, we can talk about the city, right? I could definitely talk about the city and being a teacher for over 30 years right here in the city of Newark. How many of you go to school here in Newark? Okay,
Everybody came on a bus, right?
Yeah. Came on the bus? So shout out a few places. Where are you from?
Kutztown.
Say again?
Kutztown.
Kutztown. Hey, Kutztown.
Okay.
Where are you from, guys in the middle? Well, they don't allow you to talk in school.
Park Ridge?
Park Ridge.
Okay.
Okay, now you gotta be the loudest. Where are you from?
Washington Hill!
Hey.
Okay. So, like, in school and education and cities today, by profession, I'm a science teacher, a STEM teacher, right? They always try to get me to teach language arts, but I don't. I want people to be able to speak their truth. So when you're in a structured environment, that's not always, you're not always able to do that. So I prefer science, where I can have them in my class and they can be making experiments. And like, I remember setting the class on fire. True story. True story. Didn't hurt anybody, but it did scare me. But then they liked coming to my class every day after that. Although it was a mistake, I never told them. So we want to be as interactive here as we possibly can. We don't want to talk at you. So we're going to set up mics in a few minutes where you can come up and ask questions. So get ready, because I've been known to come into the audience and pull people out.
So,
you know.
So transitioning, being an educator, and now Ameerah is incredibly working with a lot of the youth in our community in Newark as a teaching artist. With a program called Dodge Poetry in the Community that I'm also honored to teach in. I was a sub-teacher in Newark for 3 years immediately after I graduated, and then I realized how restrictive systems are. And working under that, I knew that I could, as a kid from Newark and a product of the Newark public school system, I could spew as much truth as I could at my students, and they would understand that. But there would always be folks in administration, the adults in the room were always messing stuff up. And so for me, it just felt like a defeatist thing. We would make progress, we would unlock things, and then they're like, all right, time to focus on the park test, and now time to focus on the whatever other standard SATs. Don't get me wrong, I was an SAT tutor, but I hate standardized tests. They do not measure intelligence or aptitude. They measure your ability to take a test. So I guess those of y'all on the precipice of taking that because it's necessary, like, learn how to take a test, but realize the test does not define you, right? And so I had to leave. I had to leave that system and go get my degree in creative writing to go teach higher education. And then I learned even some systems of higher education are very restrictive and are very limiting based off who they believe the population is that they serve. Because I teach at a predominantly Black and Latino institute. We just got colonized by a larger state institution. Anyway, I digress. Again, I don't want to say too much. But the beauty is that when we put a microphone in the hands or a pen in the hands, or we give a stage to our young folks, which I'm blessed enough to do. Ameerah is blessed enough. Starsky Tehsuan works with our youth in the city and does so much for the city, right? When we equip folks with these tools of liberation, right? That's when we remove all of the systems and the restrictions. So if y'all have stories within you, right? Whether they're your town story, they're your family story, they're your story, right? Don't hold back from telling those stories. They're necessary. You don't know who they might free, right?
Question for the room, just by a show of hands. How many people would say they're familiar with Newark? Excellent. So I'm going to give the rest of the folks a little background on a few things that make Newark so incredible. One, Newark is the third oldest city in the country. Newark was established in 1666. Newark is older than America. Two, Newark is one of the most migrant cities in the country. Rutgers, Newark is, I believe still, the most diverse college campus in the country. Three, Newark has experienced divestment, then blight, then resurgence. And we get to be the people who storytell behind all of that. So we're here in a very, very privileged position because we're at the resurgence stage, right? But we are very, very much living in the history of the blight and the divestment and the migrations and the deep, deep history of the city. And so the things that are written about from a very personal and individual perspective, but from people who have very open eyes and very open ears, and are not afraid to have very open mouths. So if for nothing else, we would like to encourage you to open eyes, open ears, and open mouths. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, and the thing is, if folks have heard of Newark, so much of it will always be a negative stereotype. It'll always be like, oh, Newark, it's a city of violence, and it's this and that, and even the 1967 Newark riots, which I would rather reframe as revolutions. But they were riots. Riots are the language of the unheard and the oppressed, right? But that's the thing of that, like, this story is one, this city is one that is, it's revolutionaries, right? It's not of violence. This is a city of people coming here, migrants, and making a way for their family, right? It's such a diverse city as far as the wards and the different cultures we celebrate, the different landmarks. All of us have poems that like celebrate various historic Newark landmarks, and we really hope that y'all take a look around the city as you're here for the time that you're here, and absorb some of the history, because we would rather call this it's a renaissance, right? Like, we're here, and there was a lot of things that happened beyond blight. There was white flight. There was lots of folks leaving the city in a time when we needed folks to stick around and help rebuild. And so other folks have come in. You know, it is just it's always building upon the bones and the history. And I did 1666. That's fine. That's
I'm going to add, I'm just going to go back to something you said earlier, Paul. We all are part of NJPAC workshops for youth. So we just ended a series of workshops where we brought high schoolers in for the genre of poetry. And the kids came in and they were allowed to share their voices. They were allowed to learn, I hope, new things. But the most important thing was they were allowed to speak, and speak freely in an open and nurturing environment. And there weren't people like, I just feel I'm sitting here talking at you. And that wasn't the situation. I prefer that we talk together, because believe it or not, I'm the type of educator that I'm learning every day. My kids always teach me something. If it's not anything other than my phone, hey, how you do this on the phone? Don't that. They're always hooking me up. But I would like to encourage and invite all of you, when you see that opportunity open up where NJPAC is offering those youth workshops, sign up. It was a very rewarding experience, and if you can get your parents to bring you back tomorrow, some of those youth will be performing tomorrow. They were awesome.
Is it possible for you to read one of your poems about the Newark landmarks? Yeah.
I can, you know what, I actually had one, and I looked at my audience, and I said, these kids are not gonna know Orbex.
How are they gonna learn?
They're not gonna know Bambergs. You know Bambergs? You know Macy's, right? Okay.
Yeah, but then they learn from
I get you, but I honestly pulled that poem back. I said, they're gonna be staring at me. It talks about Buster Brown. You guys know Buster Brown?
Yeah.
Did babies even wear walking shoes anymore? So, see, she's laughing. She knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, but I have to, where's our moderator? We're on some kind of schedule here, and she'll lead us if she says it's okay. Okay, I have to look for it.
2 minutes.
So you guys keep talking.
But I would like to ask both of you guys a question in relation to your positions in Newark.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is a superpower for creatives in Newark is that Newark, for a good period of time, wasn't being paid attention to.
Yes.
And with that comes opportunity to do what you want to do. So how have you experienced and taken advantage of the space and the time where you're not being paid attention to, so to speak? Like you get to produce your own platforms and create opportunities because there are opportunities being created. You get to write on things that aren't being talked about. You get to do all these things, and you are doing all these things.
I think that now is an incredible time in Newark to be a creative, because we have When Women Speak, so many platforms. We've got, we've got publications that'll put out people's voices, right, and speaking towards what's going. We've got Evolu Culture. We've got so many different movements happening within the city. And for a long time, I feel like it was just, we were cultivating, and now it's the time we get to just share. And the folks who are holding spaces are listening. And that's a beautiful thing, because that wasn't always true for us here in Newark. We were like, yeah, we need to pull artists in and do this, that, and the third, and they would use us and we'd come do our song and dance, but we wouldn't be given the exact platform to make decisions. And we've had poetry councils, we have poets who work with the city and in the city and are in positions of leadership. Our mayor is a poet and the son of the son of the most famous Newark poet, Ameerah Shabazz-Bilal, right? So we are a city of poetry in every sense. And I think like now is a very unique time in Newark, because also Dodge triangulates and comes here, right? And so this is this enormous celebration of poetry, and it's no coincidence that it happens in Newark, right?
It's poetry in the arts, because you're in the middle of the Dodge Poetry Fest, the biggest poetry fest in our area, in our country even maybe.
In North America.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the middle of the Newark Arts Festival. So that means just about every location there's art being displayed by local artists. You know, I being one of them, in the Newark Museum, the Newark Library, all across the city. I'm sorry? It's beautiful. So we're in a renaissance. And part of the renaissance is us growing you to take the reins. To take the reins and be confident. And not only be confident, I keep going back to this, know that your voice matters. Because when you speak up, there's change. As long as you're quiet, things will remain the same, right? We want all inclusion, we want love and peace, but we can't have those things unless the youth are ready and prepared. So that's my thing.
I would be remiss if not to make this point. We talk about Newark from the lens of our remembrances and history, and it is very important to me to share that Newark is a space of innovation, and Newark is a place where people decide and live out the decision that what was is no longer sufficient. So this is the place where an Ameerah Shabazz-Bilal would belong. This is the place where LaTorre and Ameerah Shabazz-Bilal and Tehsuan Glover belong. This is a place where a Dodge Poetry Festival belongs. It is no longer sufficient. And by 2012, 14, it was no longer sufficient for a Dodge Poetry Festival to be in Waterloo. Yeah. It belonged here. Thank you. It's no longer sufficient. And that's why Newark is a space of scientific innovation. You know, patent leather was invented in Newark. Film was invented in Newark. So many things were invented and innovated here because it's right here. So I would very much encourage you to get interested in Newark, to spend more time in Newark, to read up about Newark, to YouTube Newark, to TikTok Newark, whatever your preference is, get into Newark, because it is where you belong. I didn't write that.
Off the dome. Got time for questions?
We got a couple minutes for questions. Anybody have a question, please come to the microphones on the side.
Check. Okay.
And please tell us your name.
There's a mic here and also on the other aisle over there. Come on up.
Hi there.
Hey.
I'm Nate from Port Washington. It's in Long Island.
Nice.
I have a question for Mr. Shabazz-Bilal. As a creative, how does working in such a space as science, kind of pretty experimental, quantitative, how do those two sides of you kind of interact?
Okay, so it's cool. I'm glad you asked that, because they did give me a choice. Well, actually, I took my choice. Remember, I took my choice. I paid for my oh, sorry. I took my choice. I paid for my education. So they were like, oh, you're going to do language arts? I was like, no, I'm going to do science. So in science, there's something that is known as STEAM, right? So, you have the art right in the middle of that acronym. So my class was kind of taught like it was an arts class. So they, of course you have to be given the basics, and then the kids were allowed to develop from there. There was always writing, there was always drawing, there was all painting, there was always making stuff with their hands. So I covered every type of learning that could be in front of me, right? And it was a fantastic class. I had kids from lower levels coming up, because like your mother's refrigerator, everything that they made was somewhere in that room. So I don't think anybody else liked the room, but it looked great to me, because they could walk by and say, oh, I remember I wrote that poem, September. And this is science, but the poem was related to the day we blew the science room up. Or the day you told us not to eat anything in here and, knucklehead ate it. That kind of thing. So I was always able to develop that kind of thing, because anywhere I go, I'm who you see right here. Every single day, I can't change. So I was probably one of those people that I take me with me, and that's how I did my class. I hope I answered that question.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, too.
Testing. Okay. So, hi, my name is Emmanuel. I'm from Passaic Academy for Science and Engineering. Okay. And I have one very simple question for you guys, all three of you guys, and it's that, why did you choose poetry?
I believe that life is a poem. I believe life is a dance. I believe life is a song. I believe life is comedy. I believe life is a miracle. Poetry, in terms of creative expression for me, is what allows me elasticity with my articulation. So I can say what's true, but I can round the edges, I can expand it, I can contract it, I can contort it. And as a human being, my job is to express. My job is to create. So poetry allows me to create from my thoughts and my feelings, and articulate and contort.
Oh, that was a great answer. I want to co-sign. I want to basically co-sign, but like poetry is the art of everything, right? Poetry could be a stand-up routine, as y'all heard me karaoke. It can be a song, it can be a monologue, it can be a whole dance. Literally poets have interpretive dance. We've got Reggie Gaines, who works with Tehsuan Glover and incorporating dance and body and movement into our poems. A poem can be anything. Plasticity, great word. So like literally, for me, poetry was always my sole vessel of expression. As a really introverted, shy, fearful kid, I could articulate all my thoughts in poem, and then I can present and articulate them properly, right? And not have that doubt in self. That's where I got to compose myself. Then I'm on a stage and I'm like, oh, the poem's gonna let me let loose and people can really see me. So I felt really seen within the confines of my poetry, and it felt boundless. So it's always been poetry for me, and it'll always be poetry.
So for me, my answer is, I knew from the beginning that I was going to be a writer. And this showed up as early as second grade, third grade. I remember being taken to the office because I wrote a story and the teacher thought I was an abused child. She wanted to know what's happening at home. I was like, nothing, like we ate every day. We had hot dogs and beans last night, I don't know. But I wrote the story and I picked names from items that were in the room. Like one of the characters was Gallo. I got that from a wine bottle. And something else. But anyway, I knew that I was going to be a writer. Now, transitioning from writing novels and things like that, I'm also an overthinker. Like, I'm sorry, I'm compulsive with that. I'm an overthinker. So I've been writing a novel since 2008. And then something said, well, poetry, you can get to the end of that project a whole lot sooner. So I'm a narrative poet, in case you didn't notice. So each one of those poems are like stories of people that I met in my life. So I was like, voila, I can do this. This poetry thing, it works for me. There's a beginning and an end. And I'm not spinning and waiting for the end. That novel is like, I don't know, One Piece? I don't know. But that's what made me venture into this poetry thing. But it was a heck of a thing to get on a stage. That's a whole different thing. There's writing on a page, and then there's writing on a stage, or performing on a stage. Not always the same thing. So you pick what's right for you, and they're different.
And to piggyback off what Ameerah is saying, is that like there are poets who write a whole novel in verse. Elizabeth Acevedo, the poet X, right? Crossover. The form of poetry is the way you express yourself, right? And that can manifest in their plays. For colored girls, that started off as a choreo poem and it evolved into a play, right? Poetry is this really plastic thing, is this thing that can span life experiences and people believe you when you spit a poem, right? It is an incredible tool, right? We're gonna make way. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the
Appreciate it.
question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great question.
Hi, my name is Mateo. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. I had a question for all of you, but Paul, in the last poem you wrote or presented, you mentioned how Newark is tied by like cultural diversity. How do you think like the Dodge Poetry Festival and the Arts Festival brings that to life?
Incredible question. I'll start, but then I want to pass it along to my colleagues. So I think that like there's a display called Unsettled Diaspora Child, and diaspora is global, right? Diaspora is not just like, oh, it's the black, transatlantic European trade and blah blah blah. It's tied to anybody who's ever had flight and plight and had to escape something or forced out of a place and displaced. Newark is incredibly diverse because the Ironbound section is Portuguese, Brazilian, Latino, then North Newark, which is very Puerto Rican. Then you have the South, the South Ward, Central Ward. I mean, like most of the rest of Newark is hella black. But there is diversity within even blackness. Again, that's not just it's not a monolithic identity, right? We've got Caribbean communities, we've got Muslim communities. It's such a tapestry, and so many of our artists represent that because in their art is their culture, in our poems is our culture, is our story. Thank you for that really insightful question. I'm gonna pass it to these folks.
Look, you know what? You said diverse. I hit 3 of those. All right. Number 1, I'm a woman. Hey. Number 2, I'm a Muslim, a practicing Muslim. And number 3, what's the third one? Woman. A minority. Right. So it's like, what minority are you? And not only am I all those things, I taught for many years in what Paul just described as the Ironbound section, where out of 180 kids, let's break that in half, out of 90 kids, only 30 spoke English. I only speak English and shwaya Arabic, right? So to be able to communicate, we had to use a lot of methods. One of them is, where are you from? A poem I start out my year with. My science notebook was always descriptive. They have to show me a picture. They have to write the I am from poem. Every day they have to give me a relationship to what we're talking about in picture and in word. And I learned to learn people that way and learn about cultures that way. So that was all art. And then I'm a poet, and then I'm a photographer, and then I'm an artist. So all of this allowed me to stand back in my little bubble and look at somebody named Rivera, his work, the various backgrounds and diverse people in this city. Look at their stuff and just say, we're all human. That's first. There's a human element in all of this. And by the way, I don't know how many of you know about black Muslims. I'm not a black Muslim, and I don't like being pie. So I had to teach that too. So like he was saying, we're not all the same, but we are the same under that human umbrella. And that is what I love. I love this. Thank you for the question.
I want to answer. As far as Dodge Poetry Festival specifically, I would give credit to 3 things. One is the scale of it. So for this much poetry to be happening at all allows for so much diversity, allows for so many different forms of expression. Number 2, there's a woman named Isabel Gonzalez who is leading the charge for this. And she's an incredible champion for poets and poetry, which are not one and the same. Number 3, which I think is the most important, is that the poets show up as themselves. So you get the diversity because I am the only me in this building, and I show up as me. Paul is the only Paul in this building, Paul LaTorre, in this building. Ameerah is the only Ameerah, and so showing up as ourselves in a production or a festival of this scale with a champion in front of us like Isabel Gonzalez allows for incredible diversity.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Where were you? I was in New Haven, Connecticut at the book festival a couple of weeks ago. I didn't see you.
Yeah, we're working.
You were not at the library. I would have remembered.
Thank you guys for the
Thanks.
insight.
Appreciate you, appreciate you.
You got, take up space, you got this, you got this.
Okay, so this is for all three of you, but I just wanted to say that I really like how you guys talk about certain issues and how you focus on a lot of topics, and I thought it was it just sounds really effortless from where the way you talk about it. So I just wanted to know what goes through your minds, or how you come up with your poetry basically.
Okay, our process. What's your name?
Aisha?
Aisha. Thank you so much. Really insightful question. So your generative process, y'all. How do we bottle all that?
I'm gonna give a lot of the process to inspiration, so it is not my construction. Ideas and these things arrive, and I'm fortunate enough to be a vessel for them. As far as the sitting down and writing is concerned, I sit down and I write and I rewrite and I erase and I converse and I listen and I talk and I look and I watch and I feel. I let myself feel. Letting myself feel is probably the only thing I can take credit for that is incredibly magical.
Yeah, I'm a conduit. I'm not really the one writing it. It just moves. It moves through us, and you have to listen when it comes to you. Water. Sometimes, whenever I'm around water, poems come to me. If I'm in the shower, I'll stop, jump out, go on my notes app, grab a notebook. If I'm at the gym, I'll just literally blood is flowing, and I'm like, oh, an idea for a whole poem. Music is a big catalyst for me, but really, there's a poem. The material is everything. It's your life, right? So all you have to do is sit down, feel, process. Don't be afraid. You might open up a wound, but that poem is also the place that you are going to cauterize that wound. That's the place that the poem becomes scar tissue. It becomes a story, and then you can control that story, right? So that's why poetry is innately healing to me. The act of writing it, the act of performing it. So without writing, honestly, it's free therapy. It's not going to replace therapy. Also go to therapy. But for me, writing is a form of therapy, and it costs me nothing.
Yeah. One of the things I mentioned earlier is when you're in front of people, and, public speaking is really hard. I'm forgetting the word that describes me best. But what I'll say to you is I take energy in, right? So if somebody's hurting, I take that in.
Empath.
Thank you, impact. If somebody's extremely happy, I take that in. If a kid comes to school without what he needs, I take that in. And somehow taking all of that in, it becomes a story, sometimes a composite of people's lives, but it becomes me. And so in the middle of the night when I'm trying to sleep, I become very emotional, and I have to write these things down. And some of the poems, I didn't do them today because I kind of looked at the audience and I said, God, they don't need to wake me up off the ground here and fan me. But sometimes after doing these poems, I'm exhausted from allowing that energy to come back out into the world. So this is what pushes my work. They're all narratives of somebody's life or multiple people's lives. And it's always true that somebody in the audience says, thank you for that poem. I'm not the only one. So that's my process.
A great quote I once heard from another poet, and I can't attribute. You never know whose wounds might be whose wounds might be in the shape of your words, right? So you need to fill the world with those words so you can help heal others who might be going through the same thing. Thank you for that incredible question.
Thank you, Aisha.
Yeah. We're going to kind of try and do rapid fire as we can here because we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to honor 2 minutes. Okay, rapid fire.
Okay, so my name is Nina, and I just wanted to, hi. So I just wanted to ask you guys, you guys said speak, speak, with your chest, open. How do you guys how can you institute, I think as I said, somebody who has always been told that they talk too much or they talk too little.
Ooh.
And how you can incentivize them to do what they want without being criticized.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of it, yes.
Like, how can you incentivize somebody who has been told that, like, their whole life? Like, how to incentivize them, like, to don't care about what people say and, like, do what they love?
Okay, so that's their journey, right? To talk. We also have the opposite of that, don't talk at all. We also have other things that people have. And as my peers said, you have to learn how to be yourself in any environment. Like, it's not going to be easy all the time. And I wish I could say more, but every single day for me, I have to go out into the world like this, alone, and I've learned to be strong because of that. Keep talking.
Yeah. Whether I'm a yapper or I'm feeling really quiet that day, I'm gonna stand on business. A poem is a place I don't have to retract my statement. So validate yourself by writing. It is sacred. No one can take that away from you. No one.
Darcy, you got an answer?
Yeah, the art is separate from the person. So just service the art.
And every critique is valid, but no critique is gospel. No one is God of a poem, right?
Hi, my name is Shiva. I'm from WHRHS. And the question I have for you today is that what would you say to somebody who's afraid to show their art, to express themselves through their art, who can't really be themselves anymore because they don't know who that is or they're afraid of who that is?
Insightful question, Shiva. Who wants to take it on?
What's that syndrome called? The syndrome?
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. I suffer from that. I don't know about these guys, but like, I'm always.
But you're an icon.
I'm always needing somebody
You're an
to
icon.
affirm my word.
Oh, you're a whole icon in this
And
city. Yeah.
so you have to find someone in your world that can be that for you. That support person that you can go to and say, how's this look? How's this? But they have to be honest and true. So when it's bad, you want them to tell you that it's bad. But when
Honestly.
it's good, you want them to pump you up too.
Shiva, poetry is the art of finding yourself. So no one has to have themselves figured out in order to write a poem that expresses themselves. Because we're always changing. Poems are fluid, our identities are fluid, we're evolving beings. And a poem for me is how I triangulate my identity. That's how I grow into myself. I started writing poetry in like 5th grade. I don't know who I'd be without the poetry. I don't know if I would be me, but I'll never know because we're not disentangling. That was a really insightful question.
Yeah, there's a quote that I'm going to credit to a woman named Bernadette Pleasant. It's, the only people who experience imposter syndrome are people who actually have something to offer. The fact that you feel conflicted means that what you have to offer is so valuable that it's pushing you out of your comfort.
Great questions, everybody. So thank you. We have to end this session now, but let's give a big round of applause for our poets, Tehsuan Glover, LaTorre, Ameerah Shabazz-Bilal,